Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Yunita Sonia Nurhayati. My NPM is 1922-0357. I'm from class 2019 B3. And I want to tell about the role of interpreting. Here it is. Number 1 is defining the role. Role is a social science construct used to explain behavior and examine attitudes between at least two participants in any social situation. The concept of role is inextricably tied to the idea of a reciprocal relationship. Thus, exist such as doctor or patient, teacher or student, and anything else. The essential point is that each of these roles exists only in relation to the other. This contrast is useful in lesson interpreting situation to describe not only the relationship and attitudes of the clients to each other, but also the relationship between the interpreter and each client in turn. Number 2 is comparison with other professional and social roles. As in other professional roles, a reciprocal relationship is taken for granted, but the interpreter must maintain this role in relation to two clients and continually switch between them. Consequently, each client must not see the interpreter as a conveyor of information between client and interpreter, but must accept the interaction for what it is, discussion between clients. Number 3 is the interpreting interaction. We can assume that there is motivation to communicate for the achievement of goals which are shared, at least to some extent by the interlocutors. This implies a number of features such as the linear ones common to all communication between two people, namely the tendency to turn-taking, the necessity for the feedback loop, the inevitable noise and other common possibilities and pitfalls. The features peculiar to uninterpreted interaction can be looked at as a normal communication situation with two loops, one which involves client 1 and the interpreter, and the other which involves client 2 and the interpreter. Number 4 is the concept of client. An interpreter has at least two clients at any one time. Theoretically, they have equal claim on the interpreter's exercise, irrespective of consideration such as who arranged for the interpreter to be present, who is paying the interpreter, who has briefed the interpreter. The reality is often different. It is likely that the person who arranged for the interpreter to be present will consider themselves to be the client. And perception about the role of the interpreter will be governed by this presumed relationship. It is true that in certain contexts, usually business contexts, the idea of an interpreter working for one of the clients is not only taken for granted, but seen as a condition of employment of the interpreter. Such situations embody potential conflict between the interpreter as a servant of one master and the ethical imperative of interpreting where impartiality and impartiality and confidentiality are axiomatic. Number 5 is creation of the role. The first element which affects the view of the interpreter role is the question of language. A licensed interpreter, unlike a conference interpreter, operates not from a number of languages into their mother tongue or the language in which they receive the bulk of their education, but both into and out of their mother tongue or A language and their second or B language, or the classification also extends to C language. Competence in the second language needs to be of a very high order. Clients who are generally not familiar with the intricacies of the classification of language for interpreting expect the same level of performance in both directions. The difficulties inherent in the transfer of message from one language to another. The clients see the interpreter as a language converter, not as someone who concerned with communication. Hence the model of a tap which can be turned on and off at will and which will produce any language. Number 6 is translating and interpreting. Within the literature, much is assumed and little said about the differences between the two skills, apart from the fact that translation involves written text and interpreting involves oral ones. When one is dealing with clients, however, this distinction is blurred by a number of factors which, in turn, contribute to clients' perception of the roles of interpreters and translators. Two issues emerge as significant. The first is a lack of consistency within the professional in the use of the two terms. Sometimes the term translation and translator incorporate the notion of interpreting and interpreter. The second concern the interpreter often being asked to perform side translation, whereby a written document relevant to the situation, for example, lawyer or client interview, is passed to the interpreter for immediate oral translation. We can argue that this activity straddles to the two professional roles. As to others such as subdialing or short-typing. Indeed, there are some areas of professional activity which cannot be classified easily as interpreting or translating. The crucial point, which is most relevant to role construction, is the clients are not aware of this distinction and may have unreasonable expectation of the interpreter hired to perform either function. That's all for me. Thank you, and I'm so sorry if I have a mistake. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.